Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special episode of CAOverwatch. As always, I'm your host, Spencer Chason. With me is...
Hey, I'm Chris, and we are blessed with the presence of Alex, ByZenith.
Hello.
Is that right?
Yeah,
the
that's
head
right.
coach of Third Impact.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who
Awesome to
don't
be
know, I was going to say, the number one reason I want to bring on, not only did you guys have a very successful, I think, Tier 2 performance over Season 1 for 2020, which was really impressive, but you also were able to obviously pick up and sign the guy Zykk, who was recently signed for the Toronto Defiant. So I thought, hey, we can have somebody talk about Tier 2 and sort of how they're able to build such a successful organization going into the season, as well as give us some insights on the new official Toronto Defiant player who just recently joined. So, I mean, thank you so much, Alex, for coming. And I guess just to start things off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got started in Tier 2? I know you were a former Montreal Rebellion analyst, so let's start there.
Man, so starting with Montreal, so I'm 21. I'm 21 right now, so I was 20 at the time, 19 at the time, pretty young, and I did a lot of data analysis for it was a team called First Gen before, and then most of that roster ended up going to Montreal, and that's what I ended up doing. Similar to how Baroy does the stats for Defiant, I did the same thing for Montreal for a long time, and then I kind of transitioned to being more assistant coach style, and then after that, that's when I became head coach of Grunto, which turns into Third Impact, and history. Here we are today. Yeah, type thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I mean, you went into this year with Third Impact. I am not the biggest Tier 2 aficionado. I follow this scene, but it's not like I sit there and watch Tier 2 day in and day out. With that being said, going into the year, I'd obviously heard the names like, Team Envy, obviously New Montreal, the typical academy teams, Atlanta, obviously. Third Impact was one I would have had lower on my sort of tier list, right? Just based on like reputation. With that being said, you guys sort of established yourself really early on as one of the key players in that division. So I want to see sort of like, how did you sort of go from, I don't want to say it started from the bottom, now we're here, to quote another Canadian, but what really went into your like mentality on how to build such a successful roster?
Man, going after the season prior, I lost 5 out of the 6 players on my team, so I only had Zykk, another Canadian, left on the roster. So I ended up having to rebuild from there. And a lot of what I wanted to do was like, okay, this is the first time I've ever had full control of a roster at all. Every roster I've been a part of before, I didn't have entire like blank check. I had to piecemeal people together. So this is the first time I was like free to do whatever I wanted. I ended up doing something pretty unique, I'd say, for Tier 2. We did trials for 6 weeks, which is a long time. Wow. Meaning that the people in the first phase of the trials, like if you were there week 1, you were there week 6, and if you didn't want to be there week 6, I didn't want you. Because you weren't committed to it. And I used those 6 weeks to kind of gauge who people are, and like figure out like what are their tendencies, what do they want to do, what are their goals, like do they keep consistent, how do they react in a winning situation, a losing situation, if they have weaker teammates, better teammates. So I kind of put them through the ringer a lot, just in an effort to build like a meta-proof roster, because I don't have the resources to like put 9-10 guys together that can just like swap. I could swap in and out. I did that a little bit the season before. It didn't work out incredibly well for me. Maybe because it was the time, maybe it's because of the personnel, as mostly the time. So that was unfortunate, and I said, okay, I'm sticking with 6. Started sticking with 6. I ended up getting 7. But I ended up saying, okay, I need those guys to be meta-proof, so that the main tank need to play every single main tank, off tank every single off tank. The DPS, my criteria, where they need to play everything. The hit scan, the main DPS needs to be able to play all the hit scan characters like religiously, and then the flex, which is Zykk, had to be able to play everything, like everything. And that was rare at the time. And then supports, of course, play all the supports too. So it was a tough ask, especially since the like recently a bunch of players went to AL. A lot of teams were building. Like Envy just took a bunch of players that were like super good. It was. So I was just kind of going through a bunch of like people. I ended up going through like 75 people. Something like that. And then staff on top of it. Did like 20 staff members, trials and stuff. It was a long time. A lot of effort. And it was all to make sure it was meta-proof. So I ended up sticking with guys that were within close, if not like within those criteria. And then on top of that, I wanted people that were like had a certain mentality, and my assistant coach at the time, Get Amazed, another Frenchman like Zykk, his mentality from Eagle Gaming, which was a dominant EU contenders team
Way back.
seasons and years ago.
Yep.
And their mentality, a lot of it was like you need to be a warrior in game. Like you want to be feared. You want to make everyone like know who you are, like make a name for yourself rather than like just play the game and like hopefully you win. So like every single scrim, every single official was like you're fighting for your life, and it was a lot of. Aside from that, it was a lot of talking or creating a family environment. Not many people understand like we spent 7 months together by the end of the season, which was a few weeks ago. So 7 months is a long time, and if you don't fully disagree or fully agree with everyone, and you aren't fully acclimated with what everyone wants and like how they want to do things or like things like that, then it becomes an issue. Like there's rifts happen all the time on previous teams I've had. But I wanted to make sure that everyone was going to be on the same page, like all times, working hard. We all had the same common goal, which was Al, of course. So we kind of built off that, and we created a family, which is like the truth. It wasn't a team. A team to me is 6 guys with maybe a coaching staff that could do whatever they want and like play the game. But a family is like go at bat for them and like help them out outside the game, like as much as you can. And I wanted that camaraderie. At the top of that, like the players like needed to fit that, of course. I also wanted people that would review on their own, people that would like go in their free time and spare time to like figure out like what was wrong, what's going on with this, what's going on with that. And that was like those were big things for me. And I ended up picking a roster of 6, which were pretty well rounded, except for my hit scan, Tayo. He wasn't proficient at Widow to the level I needed him to be. So I picked up Carter, who was pretty incredible, like in tier 2 so far, to be that role, just the specialist of Widow, similar to how like Ants was at the beginning for Shock. Same thing. So I had him come in. I picked up Tayo and Carter originally right away. I tried both of them at the same time against each other. And at the time, mechanically, Carter was better because he's a very mechanical player. But Tayo was a very good teammate and a very good team player. So he was someone that I really was like interested in saying like, okay, if we invest time in this guy, like teach him the game, get him out of his slump or wherever he was, because he was in college, not really wanting to play the game. You get him out of that, what happens? Like, is he going to be great? That was the risk I was willing to take. And then, so the DPS ended up being the first people I picked up. So Carter and Tayo were the first people I picked up, and then Zykk was the third one. Aside from Zolek, obviously, but Zykk was. To put it like to be very blunt about it, he was the only true flex player that I trialed. Everyone could play all the projectiles, of course, the traditional stuff, and then when it came to going into hit scan, some people couldn't play hit scan. When it came to certain like, I guess Doomfist was one of the ones that is a little more niche for some flex DPS players. Not all of them could play that. So it was like he could play that. Some people couldn't to the same level. So he had a higher level than everyone else there, and he could play all the hit scans. He could play all the projectiles, and he was a great teammate as well. So it was a no-brainer. And he just come off, I think, a year off the game. His parents made him go back to school and finish high school. And then so I'm looking at flex DPS, and I'm not getting anyone that I'm liking or like I'm falling in love with. And then my assistant coach, Get Amazed, is like, hey, I have this friend who played on Eagle Gaming with us, not on the main roster, but like he played in the side a little bit. He knows he understands the mentality, which is what like him and I want, of course. And he's like, understands the mentality. He wants to work hard. And he's got a year to make it in the league. Like a year was what he was given. He came in. His first game or first scrim was on West Coast from France, which is 200 ping, and he was playing Doomfist for 4 hours that day. And he was destroying people that were on like 40 ping, 50 ping, just bodying, and then like playing everything to a high level. Comms well. For people that don't know like or have ever spoken to Zykk, like his English is like it doesn't have an accent, like a heavy French accent. He speaks very good English. So it ended up being like everyone can understand him. Whatever. Get Amazed has a really thick French accent, so it's a little harder to understand him sometimes. But Zykk had none of that, so he's like really clean and calm and in comms and stuff. His biggest issue for us though was because it was super late and it was like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. scrims. He couldn't speak very loud. So it was like, hey, I can't yell or do anything crazy in comms. So he ended up like being this close to his mic and
Oh my
like
gosh.
speaking really
That's
quietly,
so funny.
and everyone just boosted him up so that we could hear him. So like even if it was like a hectic comm that he needed to scream to get out, it was never a scream. It was always like a little bit louder than normal,
Yeah.
just so he couldn't wake anyone
Yeah, you
up.
hear like a slight rise in his tone. You're like, oh my god, Zykk's in trouble. Like we gotta.
Yeah. And yeah, so he ended up being the great pickup. And then I picked up Iris, or Hyun is what we call him, my only Korean. We pulled him out of PAC, Pacific Contenders. My social media manager actually was just one day is like, hey, there's this kid, Korean kid, 4700 flex support. That's really nasty. You should try him.
Yeah.
He was playing for, I think, Triumph's academy team at the time.
Yeah.
They had some like underground Koreans, I guess, at the time, working with them and stuff.
Mhm.
He was one of them, and I tried him, and it was like I instantly was like, this guy's insane,
Yeah.
like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was what I wanted was, I wanted firepower in the front, which is DPS and the tanks, and I want firepower in the back, because most people's support lines aren't like they don't have the potential to just explode out and kill everyone.
Yeah.
Like not many. You don't find many Karivs in tier 2.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to say, apart from
At
Chris.
all.
Yeah.
No, you don't find many Karivs in tier 2. So like in an effort to find that, or effort to like get that sort of level, I was like, I hope that I can find someone. I had one originally, and then he ended up didn't end up working out or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I got Iris or Hyun,
Yeah.
and it was like instant. Just I want him. He's gonna be nasty.
Yeah.
He didn't speak very good English. He spoke
Mhm.
in-game English, so he knew some callouts. He
Calls,
knew
yeah.
like calling the
Mhm.
abilities and stuff. Like he knew basic numbers, like the countdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was proficient in English, but once again, like Tayo, it's like if you invest time into him, what
Exactly.
happens,
Mhm.
right? So that was a risk I was gonna take for
Yeah.
sure, no matter what. And he had no ego. He was hungry to learn. He was a great teammate. Like
Yeah.
fits in the system what I wanted.
Because I was gonna say, Iris was an interesting one because I think he's one of those players who think performed really well, but also like I was watching. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I don't have any knowledge, but I was watching Kareem stream the other day, and he was actually doing with Iris, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
They do all the time.
Yeah, they do all the time. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I was really like, I was impressed by him in Contenders. So like, so you're saying that the English and the communication and stuff really has improved, even over such a short span as like season 1 and stuff like that.
Yeah, he did an interview, I think a few days ago. That came out a few days ago, like 3 or 4 days ago,
Yeah.
in full English.
Yeah.
Like the responses
Wow.
were entirely in English, and
that's
I mean
impressive.
it's still like broken Korean. Like you can
it's still
like,
really
some of
impressive.
the words you don't understand,
Mhm.
but you read the English underneath it, like you can get it. Like, oh, he really learned a lot. He is a teacher.
Mhm.
We have a translator.
Yeah.
So it wasn't ever an issue. It was more so like, I'm a native English speaker. You two are native English speakers.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
we speak really fast when we want to,
Yes.
and that's when he
Yeah.
like is like, okay, what is happening? So that was always an issue at the beginning, until like I started saying like, okay, I'm gonna slow down, and I'm gonna literally ask you the same question that I'm asking everyone else.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of the review, or like during it, just so everyone else gets it, because his opinion matters too.
Yeah. for sure.
So his English improved a ton over the season, a
Yeah.
ton.
And how did that sort of impact your like team performance? I know that one of the reasons I'm so interested in this is because I look at a team like the Toronto Defiant, who has decided to go like fully Western speaking, and I know that a couple of the fans have wanted them to kind of get off of that, because again, like when you look at all the top teams in the league right now, it's no surprise in that almost all of them are at the very least like half Korean, right? Like I think the number one team right now that's all Western speaking is LA Valiant. They're 8th, and even they have a Korean main tank. So like from your experience, like, do you think that it's not really required to have a full Western speaking roster? That, I mean, there's stuff like there's certain callouts that you can just understand, or because I can imagine someone speaking really fast in the heat of the moment, like that would be another reason where like
Yes.
he might struggle with understanding, and I could see that causing difficulties moving forward.
Yeah, a lot of, and this is something that actually fascinated me a lot, is a lot of Overwatch League teams that are mixed rosters, English speaking, but like have Koreans, like people that don't speak the language natively.
Yes.
A lot of their communications are very basic in game.
Mhm.
It's just call outs, targets, and then it's just trusting that your teammates are going to fall into place.
Yeah.
I understand that. It's not that I don't think it's bad. I think that's great for what they want to do. But I want leaders, like people that are going to say like, we're going to do this now.
Yes.
And we're gonna do this like in the game. If a rotation needs to happen or a certain play needs to happen, we're gonna make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So I
well-
wanted people that were like for sure gonna say that, and he didn't say that. He wouldn't say it because he's Korean and he didn't speak the language. So when he started learning, we got him to the point where he would tell people to like, hey, like we're gonna do this play, and it was very broken, very basic, but it was like, okay, we're going to window first and then flux second or something basic, just because he understands the game just as well as everyone else does.
Absolutely.
So
Well-
I like him to be able to say that. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was not to diverge too much from the conversation, but I know that me and Spencer have had a couple conversations about whether it's okay to have mixed rosters, mixed language rosters, and I've always argued against that because I feel like it is okay for callouts, but it's very much harder to make full-on plays within the heat of the moment between people with mixed rosters. And I felt like that kind of showed on our Toronto Defiant roster last year when we had a mixed roster. I felt like our adaptability was not high enough for Toronto Defiant personally. We were a little too rigid, and that could have been one of the reasons.
Okay. Yeah. So as someone that like agrees with mixed roster, my argument for that is everything that can be an issue in game can be solved out of game.
Okay.
So like for example, we had this issue at the very beginning where like Iris wanted to make a play going left for some reason, and we wanted to go right. Okay. And when 5 English speakers are saying let's go right and he's like let's go left, you like just say no, we're going right. You can overstep and argue a lot, and that's where butting heads happens.
Yeah.
But if you go in a review and you sit down and say, okay, look, this is how you view the game. This is how you view the game. This is how you view the game. And you get 6 people to collectively agree on something, then the little micro plays become easy. A lot of it's just trust, like of just, hey, I trust that whatever you say, I'm gonna if I blindly trust that and it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, we're gonna go review it. That's what scrims are for.
Yeah.
Like so, like if we make a really piss poor play that, let's say, I'll use the English speakers and the non-English speaker.
Yeah.
So if the English speakers say we're gonna make this play, and then it does, and the Koreans like we're not gonna make this play, and the play doesn't work out, then we sit down and we talk about why the one play is good, why the other play is good,
Yeah.
and then we come to a happy medium, and then that's where discussion happens. And I think that like most teams don't do that legwork because it takes a lot of extra time. There's been days where we sit. Like we end a block at 10 Eastern, and we sit in a call for 2 hours just talking about what do you want to do with this play? What do you want to like? What's your goal here? What is your goal here? Come to a common agreement, and then it ends up being like, I think with the Western thing, like having mixed roster, because everyone has different experiences. Like Korean Contenders is much different than North American, and then Pacific Contenders is much different than North American, or Europe is all that crazy stuff. Like everyone has different ideas. So if you can culminate them and combine it to one thing, then that one thing you do, as long as you guys trust each other, like the little in-game stuff like falls into place. And like a lot of what I felt was easier to do in like the little adaptations mid-game was like a buddy system where a lot of the time Tayo, he's Japanese, he lives in Japan, but he's played in Japanese ranked, which is Koreans, like speaking Korean, so he knows a little bit of it, not a ton. So him and Iris were paired a lot of the time for little micro plays. So it's like, okay, Hyun, I want to do this, and then Hyun's like, okay, let's do that, or Hyun's like, Tayo, let's go do this, and then Tayo's like, yeah, let's go do that. So it makes it easier because if one person makes a play and it's a really bad play, you can get punished for it if it's just one. But if it's two, then the rest of the team has to invest in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting. Tayo was the one who like really popped off at the World Cup. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? He had like a really good performance. Okay, that's what I thought it was. I'd seen him play before. He was a really good player at the World Cup. Not to put too much emphasis, but still, it was impressive. So yeah, I really enjoy hearing your like mentality of how you went, and because I've always wondered how like tier 2 teams really go into scouting, and it's funny that like you said that you took this unique approach where you did like 6 weeks of scrims and you wanted to find all around players who could play every meta, and I feel like it was very reminiscent of how Packing 10 created his LA Valiant roster, and I think Packing 10's got a lot of respect in the Overwatch League scene. Obviously, he's been able to take what a lot of people consider to be, ourselves included, the 19th, 20th best team in the league, and all of a sudden he's in the top 8 position. And again, Toronto Defiant spent X amount of money on players, and we're 16th. So I think it was a really cool decision, and it's cool to see like the success that Third Impact has had in tier 2 and the success that LA Valiant has had at the Overwatch League scene, and sort of see how those mentalities mirror one another. It's just really interesting. So we've spoken a little bit because obviously again, like Zykk is a really interest. So for all the fans out there who are trying to find, like what kind of player are we getting with a guy like Zykk? And then not just in terms of his like pros, because obviously you're his coach, you can gas him up all you want, but I also want to know like some of the cons that Zykk really had to work on throughout the year, and some stuff that he still probably has to improve in order to reach that next level in terms of Overwatch League players.
Yeah, so every time someone asks me about my players, I'm probably one of the only people that'll give you the like real. They're bad at this, they're good at that, and I choose to focus on like what they're weaker at, because those are the things like, hey, if their weaknesses are a lesser evil than another guy, then I'm gonna pick that guy up.
Yeah.
So for Zykk to me is like, when he finds his footing, and he will, he's the epitome of consistency.
Yeah.
It just depends on where you set the bar.
Yeah.
So like if his consistency is down here, he's gonna stay here. But if you set his consistency up here, he's gonna be up there. It's just a matter of getting there, whether that's coaching or time or meta, maybe something like that. It's gonna take a little bit. So, like, it wasn't built in a day. He wasn't incredible overnight. It took a while. But Zykk is someone like, he's the only person genuinely that can say that I could talk to him about something in a scrim, like a scrim environment, pause the match, give him a minute spiel of, hey, you should do this but differently. He's the only person that will instantly change what he wants to do. He's the most adaptable player that sense. Now, the flip side of that is he is ping locked. He plays projectile characters. Granted, he's comfortable on most everything. He can play most everything. He understands a lot of it, but I think where people see like, oh, Zykk shouldn't be on this roster, or he's not worthy of the Toronto Defiant, they should bring in agilities or whatever. It's like Zykk came from a drastically different team environment, from us to Toronto Defiant, drastically. And to be completely blunt with it, we had a full coaching staff that was fully invested in everything, and then he comes into a squad that just lost their head coach. Right, has an interim head coach, is kind of falling on hard times. He comes at the same time a new main tank comes in, Numlocked. Right, so they're still going. They have a lot of growing pains to do. For Third Impact, we weren't good for the first 3 months of the 7 months we were together. 2 months of the 7 months we were together. There's a seeding tournament before Contenders where you decide where you're placing in Contenders or Trials or OD, and we lost like the second game. Like, we barely scraped through the Trials. Like, so, and it was because like maybe there was a lot of little issues that could have gone into it, but like we were still growing, still learning and learning to trust each other, and it just took time. And it's absurd to say that someone's just going to come into a roster and instantly make them better. Like, let's take Kevster and Onigod for example. Right. Let's say Kevster is the end all be all DPS for everything. Right. When you put him in with Birdring and stuff, he's playing with people that are of his caliber, and they didn't win. But it has nothing to do with their inability to do it. Of course, it's the first game. Same with Oni. Nerves come into play.
Absolutely.
Right? You're not used to anything. Right? So it's absurd to say that he's going to instantly have like a change. And Zykk's good where he can be supportive a lot of the time. And I told him this when we first started on Third Impact, because Kyle was a very hit or miss player. Like, he could pop off if you played around him really well. And then he would kind of slide back in the shadows if you didn't give him a ton of resources or didn't play for what he wanted to do. Because he's very opinionated, very strong like mental of like what he wants to do, and that like it would be an issue if we didn't talk about it, of course, like I said earlier. But we did. So a lot of what I told Zykk to do is like, and you can ask him, he'll tell you. I literally sat down with him and was like, look, this season you are not going to be the playmaker. There's not going to be a single moment unless you just freaking kill 6 people or whatever. There's not going to be a moment where everyone's going to be like, oh, Zykk's carrying or whatever. I'm like, you're going to be the one that's basically silently behind the scenes doing his job better than anyone else. With May, with Tracer, whatever other characters he played at the time, Hanzo sometimes in Double Sniper. You're the supportive role, and his role a lot is, I'm going to overstep here, and then I'm going to back up. And then when I back up, I'm backing up into a place where, like, if I back up this way and Surefour is that way, he can kill you. Or Logix is that way, he can kill you. And so they need time to figure that out and figure out how that baiting works and how to trust each other, because a lot of it's trust, a ton of it's trust. And if you don't blindly believe in what the other person's doing, then you're not gonna have any success at all.
Yeah, well, I've said this a couple times, and I'll say it again, is that I feel like Overwatch League, it's less built on longevity. You know, they expect you when you come into places, they expect you to be good.
Yeah.
Like that, and just pop off all the ready. Whereas it's easier to build more of a growth mentality within I feel like contenders, because although I'm sure you do have your pressures, it's different than the Overwatch League. You know, you can
it's much
have
different.
a tough time on trials. You know, your Third Impact, you know, people aren't thinking you're a Fusion Academy or something like that. So you're in this place where you can build a mentality and get up towards a certain spot. Where if you go in Toronto, people are like, second year doing bad.
You got to be there.
Like, what are you guys doing?
Like, I was going to say, I can speak for all Toronto Defiant fans where I say part of this is just people they see Zykk is signing and they're like, please. You know what I mean? Like, it's been so long.
It's like,
oh, I know.
Is that the light? Is it coming down?
Is that the light?
Please up the rankings, please.
It's just time. And it sucks because I'm in the same place where, like, if I let's say I want to go to Al, which I do, of course.
Yeah.
And the signing window for me isn't until August. Like, when the moment regular season's over is when people start looking at coaching staff potentially. Like, players go easily, coaching staff not so much during the season.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, Defiant needs a head coach or whatever, but still, the timing doesn't really work out for coaches. So I have to wait too. Yeah. And that for anyone, waiting sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want it done now. I'm like I beat my head against the wall when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, we're losing. Like, what can I fix to make it better? Yeah. What are we messing up in scrims? No, I fester over that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way, even with I just do the podcast with the Defiant, but I was telling Chris, early today when we were talking to prep for the show, I was like, man, I like to think I'm somebody who can solve problems or look at a situation, right? See the issues, it's what I went to school for, and try to figure out where are the, discrepancies and what can you improve upon to get a better product. And I'm sitting there at this Toronto Defiant team and I'm like, man, I you know what I mean? I had my opinions earlier on throughout the year. We had Adam on the show. He sort of, shed some light, kind of confirmed some things that we thought. And then we see them play the Vancouver Titans, who look much improved. And I'm like, okay, some things are starting to click. And then we just get smoked by the Atlanta Reign. It's like, damn, is this just do they have our number? Is this because at some point, given the team time, it's but man, we only have so many weeks left of the season, right? You can't just, the way that who knows how the playoffs are going to work, but at some point, we need to start seeing some success, ideally sooner rather than later. I guess this is just going to be the final point since we got on the topic of coaching staff and next year. And I was a big fan of Third Impact. Obviously, I always, Richard's a big fan of the show and from Alpha Flight, so we do support Revival as well. But a big reason I was a big fan of Third Impact was because it was sort of almost, Team Canada World Cup roster missing a Surefour, Shredlock, maybe a Crimzo or someone like that, right? With you had the history of Montreal Rebellion, and then you have Sword, who's another coach who's Canadian. Yeah. And then your off-time players, it's Icy, right? I'm slipping my head right now off the top of my head.
Yeah. I didn't have an American on the roster.
Yeah, exactly. Zolik and oh my god, the last Rezer at the very end who came in there, who used to play for Revival. So just sort of give me your sort of expectations for this roster moving forward, maybe your coaching staff, hopefully your goals for 2021. And then we can move into Toronto versus Atlanta.
Sure. Yeah, I mean so
or season 2. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what it's just recreating what we did. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes I made, and there's a lot of mistakes the players made, and there's stuff that we want to do differently. So it's just okay, learn from it, absorb what happened, and then let's move on and go forward. I didn't really talk much about Decay or Icy, but I picked those guys in the trials late, they were the last 2 people on the roster. But they're same thing, consistency, what they want to do and stuff, and basically what I want to do really is prove people wrong. Everyone's told us since the very beginning, whether it be about individuals or whether it be about the team as a whole or the organization, people are oh, Third Impact's not good enough. They're they have bad this, that, and the other. Myself too. Do people think I'm angry? When I coach, it's just I care. It's because I care. Yeah. So aside from that, everyone, I want to prove everyone wrong. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times people told me Decod's too old to go to the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
Yes. Numlock's how old? Older than Decod, and he's killing it. Yeah. So
27. I think Numlock's 27.
Yeah. So don't give me that.
Fact Fiction last year was sim age 27.
Yeah. Don't give me that. You're too old. No. So it's just proving people wrong. Huh?
That really is the best feel when you have these unjust accusations put on
criticisms,
you. And then you're like, wow, this doesn't make sense. So it's so easy. It's so nice. It's such a nice feeling when you prove them wrong.
Yeah. And even for the staff too, because I have Sword and Natter on my coaching staff. Now Natter is a
Yes, now
like to the tier 3 people, he's like a big streamer personality. He
Yeah.
streams a lot. Like he loves the educational stuff. And I told him, you can do all that all you want, right? Just make sure you come back to us and
Absolutely.
like, work with us. So I encouraged him to do that, obviously. And I saw him as like someone has a lot of potential and like places to grow. So like picking him up was like, okay, he can grow a lot with under me and Sword. And he's learned a lot. He's still got a long way to go, of course. So it's like, and people thought like he's like the tier 3 Jane or whatever.
Yeah.
Like before, when Jane was streaming all the time, like, okay, like that's fuel to the fire, man. Just keep adding charcoal.
Yeah.
Sword's the same way, because Sword's like been in the scene for a while.
Yeah.
Like is he good enough? What's the rumors? Blah 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 blah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's good enough. We're all good enough to do it. It's just like prove people wrong.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly.
like that next season for me is this. It's like, I want to show you that what we did last season was a mistake. It was not a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like we got lucky.
Yep.
It wasn't like something happened, like, you know, the seas parted and we just magically got the second place. Right? Granted, we didn't win, so that'd be nice to win the next season. Of course, that's the goal. But it's still improved. Like, I want to make sure that every single player that I put into Owl is ready.
Yeah.
Like Zykk was to me was ready. Like,
Yeah.
he is ready still.
Yeah.
It's just he needs a second, and like he needs the coaching staff to say, okay, we're gonna do this, and like have a discussion with everyone. Like, how do you want to play this?
Yeah.
How do you want to play this? And then go through those scenarios and build together. Same with Num, because Num's like, he's got to learn too. Like because, you know, it's like, yeah, he coached the team for a little bit, but he's playing now drastically different.
Yep.
So I want to
100
make sure
less pain would help with both of them, but yeah, continue.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I want to make sure my team's ready for Al. That's like every player individually and staff too.
That's pretty interesting. And another thing on coaching is, I feel like coaching is different for Contenders than it is for Owl. When you're, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but coaching Contenders is about growing your players, whereas coaching Owl is more about honing your players.
Perfecting.
Now, do you feel like you? Yeah, I guess it does depend. I'm just an outsider, so don't quite know. But do you ever chat with the coaches of these Owl teams and talk about some of the things that they're looking for in possible prospects for Contenders?
Yes and no. It's more indirect rather than like a direct conversation. Where they're like, "Hey, I like your player does this. I don't like." Not like they say they don't like a certain thing, but I like that so and so does this a lot. I like so and so that does this a lot. But it depends really. Like, for me, I would agree that like I'm refining and like getting them to Owl, and that's like my job, and that's a hard thing to do because I have no one to mentor me.
Absolutely.
About it. I have no one to look up. Like, I mean, I could look up to the coaches of Owl teams and stuff. Like, I've had conversations with Krusty on Shock about like, because him and I have very similar coaching styles.
Yeah.
Like, how do you lead a team to do this? How do you lead a team to do that? I have like my agent's a mentor of mine too, just like talking about just stuff like what can I do better. Like, I'm constantly trying to learn. But like I do hone a lot. Like I do hone a little bit. Like, depending on what it is. Like, if it's a certain player, like let's say Zykk, like Zykk's really good at May. Honing that is the right word for it. Yeah. Because he was naturally good at May, probably better than most of the Owl May players. So like just honing that is like part of the understanding of it. But like a lot of it for me is like, I mean, for lack of a better way to explain it, like simplicity is like I install a brain. Yeah. In a place where maybe there wasn't, or maybe like they're lacking some stuff, and it's not like, and I mean that comes off pretty like it comes off like I'm the smartest person and they should know like my style, but it's not like I'm saying like you're gonna do my way or the highway. It's like, look, you have 6 options here. Understand your 6 options.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the development part. I'm not like for Zykk especially, like there's not a single moment where I told Zykk that he had to do this unless it was like preparing for a certain team. Yeah. Like, it was like, you have a ton of options to do. You should do anything within this like area of like expertise. Yeah. Anywhere in this range, 100%. And that happens for a lot of players. Like a lot of players are just told like, I can't tell you how many players in tier 2, tier 3 that like, especially even Razor coming up is like, I was told I have to do this. Yeah. Like, you also don't have to. Yeah, exactly. You can do other stuff. So I don't like, because like I don't know what people want. Like one coach wants something, another coach wants another thing in the Overwatch League, right? Yeah. So until I get there, that's when I can tell them I want this. Exactly. But but before I get there, everything is like in terms of a broad sense of what they need to do. So that's kind of like how I look at it, at least.
Yeah. No, I think it's been I mean, again, I've been really enjoying, because this is again like I've watched tier 2, but by no means, am I this again aficionado. So it's been really interesting to hear like the mentalities and the coaching styles and all that go on in tier 2. It's been really like eye opening for me. So that out of the way, I mean, I'm pretty good in terms of that. I think it's a fun conversation. I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm down to get into some Toronto Defiant versus Atlanta Reign recap if you guys are. This is what I've been looking forward to all day.
We're not looking forward to.
So Alex, yeah, well, just I mean, kind of get this out of the way. Just I assume people at home, if you don't know by now, but you've been watching. I assume the Toronto Defiant games, especially since Zykk's been brought up, right? Because I mean, yeah. So you did get to witness the rise of the 3-0 of the Vancouver Titans to the fall of getting 3-0'd by the Atlanta Reign. So for the Atlanta Reign specifically, because we sort of already broke down the Titans and it is what it was, but what sort of give me your initial thoughts on how that game went and how Toronto Defiant and Zykk performed.
Well, okay, so before even going into the game, Atlanta Reign to me is a very they are on the day they are incredible or they are average.
Yeah.
And so they're a very hit or miss team, period. And I've known Gator for a long time.
Yes.
Those guys, like the players on their roster have the potential to be insane.
Yeah.
Like if they're all together, but if they're not like all on the same page, they show a little more average, right? Hawks and their tank line's insane. Gator and Hawk are nuts. Popo's pretty friggin' good for all I care, right?
Yeah.
Their backline's solid. Their DPS are solid. And when they played a few days ago, it was kind of in like after a slump a little bit.
Yeah.
The Reign were kind of in a slump. They were like not. I don't want to say like bagging it, but they were average. They didn't show the potential that they should have.
Yeah.
So then you get into a meta where like they probably were more comfortable, or maybe they said, okay, we need to change something, step something up.
Yeah.
Then they start showing into their world-class talent thing.
Yeah.
So like not to knock the Defiant or anything, but like I think the Reign came to play.
Yeah.
When they played that game.
Yeah.
Now going into the Defiant or whatever, like I have no idea what goes on for like picking comps and stuff like that. In contenders as well. Like what comp you play on the map really depends on what your players are good at.
Yeah.
And what your players want, really. Because like for me, if I tell them you're gonna play X comp and they're like, I think Y is better, and I force them to play X comp, they're not gonna be happy.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They're not gonna want to play it. So if I tell them like, okay, there's X, Y, Z plays to make, and I was like, I like Y, and they're like, yeah, but I want to do Z. I'm going with Z.
Yeah.
Because they're invested in it. They're gonna give more effort into that play.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how the comps work inside of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time for me, it was just like, it was there was little tiny mistakes that cost a lot.
Yeah.
And same with our team on Third Impact. Like when the little things start snowballing to bigger things, it makes a big issue. And especially at that level, one bad shield could cost you a fight. For Zykk specifically, one bad blink, recalling too early, like not knowing what space he's supposed to be in. Maybe Surefour isn't saying exactly where he wants to play. Maybe he is, and then the players aren't playing around it. It could be a number of things, right? Like the players get cut out a lot. I felt like sometimes the backline got cut out a little bit too much. Everyone, it pained me because everyone in the chat was like, "Oh, Zykk, get Zykk out of here, blah blah blah," and I'm like, everyone else is dying first.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So it's like, okay, if the tanks die first or the supports die first, it's not Zykk. Potentially, it could be.
Yeah.
But what else is going wrong in a general overall sense?
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I definitely, I mean, to defend the mob that is, the plat YouTube, gold YouTube chat out there, like, I don't have a problem with Zykk whatsoever playing. I've still been on the show saying that I think his Mei is pretty good. Especially, I like the fact that he plays a more safe, supportive style of Mei. I thought that was always Agility's weakness. Like, he could hit the icicles and he could output damage, but there's too many times where he would just jump into the front line and just die. Where I don't think Zykk necessarily has that issue. To me, it was always like seeing him play Tracer. I just was always just like, I'd rather see Logix. And that might be just me not understanding the game enough, but I personally really liked Logix as Tracer, even though I do think that was a bit of the issue for us this game, that Edison kind of just seemed to have his number. And then if you're running a more mirror comp and the opposing Tracer is just having your number, it's sort of tough to win that composition, right? If all those things are equal and one Tracer's just clearly outplaying another. Like, I don't mind them switching it up and going towards the May comp. My question would just become, is the May comp the better comp? Because I think that Atlanta Reign has a very good double shield. Like you said, Gator and Hawk, Orisa Sigma is extremely strong. They can run the double flex support with Kodak and Dogman, even though I actually forget I don't think they did that time. But either way, that option's always available. And Baby Bay on Ashe and Edison on Tracer, it fits Atlanta's team really well, on top of the fact that they seemingly had a number in scrims. We know that from talking to some people.
Yes.
But yeah, so my question was always like, not should Zykk be playing, it was, is May the proper hero to play in this situation? And then you're also playing Zykk over somebody else. When it comes to Tracer, it's like, well, would I not just rather see like Logix in there, for instance? That was sort of my opinion going into this. But I don't think Zykk was the issue. I wouldn't sit there and be like, Zykk through and that's why we lost. I think that's just not accurate.
I mean, he's not my player, so if you want to shit talk him all day long, that's fine. Hey, Zykk's a problem, bro.
Yeah.
But no, Zykk's in there. As far as I'm concerned, like, okay, well, I'll answer the first question about the comp stuff. I don't think May's the better pick at all, actually, because it's really slow, like really slow.
Especially without a Lucio and without a Reinhardt,
It gives a lot of room for the Tracer to ramp up and get confident really quickly. Yeah. And a lot of we were getting this issue in Contenders because Kevster was on Tracer. When they did end up not playing that against us, but we prepared to play that, play against that, and that was always the biggest issue. Is like, how do you deal with the Tracer that's confident, that understands his cooldown usages, and understands where he wants to be? It's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
I don't know what goes on in the Defiant at all, and I'm in no place to say what they should do roster wise or like personnel wise. But like, to me, I don't think Zykk is the Tracer. And I say that because this is his fourth game, and he's up against Edison, who's been dominating in Korea and just dominating in the Overwatch League. Yeah. And that guy's coming in, truthfully speaking, in Edison's mind, I'm coming into a game where this team barely beat Titans or they struggled, they're struggling right now. I'm coming in confident, so that makes you play more loose and more unchained, and it makes it even harder to deal with from the Defiant side. Yeah. Zykk's in there, I think, because the May swap is something that they might want to do. Yeah, it's like a safety thing. Like, okay, if we need to play May, Zykk's probably better than having Logix playing May or something. That's a safety thing. It ended up being where they didn't even need it. But so aside from the safety part, I actually think, and I know Logix well, and I actually think that he played too passive too on Tracer. Like he wasn't aggressive enough at all. Yeah. And to put it to put it into perspective, if you go back and watch, a lot of Edison, what he was doing is he was inside of Defiant, inside of them getting picks, or in a really close tight off angle, where Logix is playing more with shield or a longer flank. Yeah. It's a different style. But when you have to play against someone that's that caliber, that's just unchained aggression on you, you got to match that.
No, I agree.
And if it was me, and I have no idea, I have no idea comp structure or whatever, or no idea who fits what. If it was me, I'd put Surefour on Tracer, and then I'd put Logix on Ashe. And the reason I say that, and I've scrimmed them for it. Yeah. And I know it's gonna be a point of maybe disagreement or whatever, but when Surefour ramps up and he plays really confident, it's hard to play against that a lot of the times. And he's more of a player where he wants to control the game and stuff. Yeah. But if he's and you can do it two ways in the Ashe Tracer, let's say. The one way is you play around where your Ashe is the whole time. Yeah. Your Tracer sets it up, or you play around your Tracer, where the Ashe is just kind of filling in a space where she can get value. Logix plays more of a reserved, I'm back watching the game and I could pick people off as a sniper in general. From old metas even. Yeah. And he can fit that role back pretty easily. He can play aggressive. I know he he's very he can adapt pretty easily. Yes. But if he needs to go back in that old way, he can do that. And then you put Surefour in a spot where, hey, we're playing around you, so when you get value, you tell us to push, we'll push. And then Logix can take his angles. Yeah. He can win his duels. I have no idea how the Ashe matchup for both of them works. Yeah. But if it was my guess, Zykk would be the last person I put on Tracer because it's his third game. Yeah. So if you get someone confident, not the guy.
Yeah. So I completely agree about Zykk's not the one on Tracer. I mean, I think we're in agreement on that. Personally, we've had this conversation multiple times on the show, so I don't mind getting into it because obviously we don't normally get the silver medalist tier 2 coach on the podcast. I really do want to hear your perspective. But we've had this conversation with Adam, and I've had this conversation multiple times on Chris. I actually don't like Surefour's Tracer. I generally think that in terms of his like if you put his Tracer up against Edison's, I think Edison's just like beats him. Like, and that's no knock in Surefour. I've always thought that his best characteristics of a player is like truly understanding the game, being able to like take off angles, and being a very like he's not a very resource heavy player, right? Like I think when you think you want your Ashe, I always felt like you wanted your Ashe on that crossfire, being able to land those big dynamites, being able to like set up those crossfires. And then you want your Tracer to be the one who you like give the armor pack, and I know you couldn't, Brig was banned, but like give the armor pack and like frag. Like that's sort of how I always had the idea of like that's how you would play that comp. And I always felt that like Logix would play the I am going to be Tracer and I'm just going to frag out a little bit better than Surefour, who like I know he likes to control the game, but he's still like a very cerebral player in the way that he plays it. So I was always a pretty big proponent of Surefour on the Ashe, Logix on the Tracer, but I do want to hear your side of it, because I mean, again, we have you here, you might as well.
Yeah, I can understand. No, that's fair. I'm all for it. If at this point it's like that comp relies a lot on just it's weird because it's a core of 5, and then there's the one guy that's you leave him to his own devices.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes an issue. Now let's take Mayhem. Let's go into them for the way they play it. Yaki is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, insane at Tracer, and he understands the space well. I'm sure Kuki has talked to him a lot about like where you want to be playing and why. He gets it really well, and I'm sure, not knocking the Mayhem, but I'm sure like they all play that like cerebral game, not just like I'm gonna just frag out here or whatever.
Yeah.
But because in a comp like that, I favor the person. It could go either way, really. You can have Logix on Tracer. You can have Surefour on Tracer. I would do it down to the day of who has more confidence.
Yeah.
And who thinks that they can just beat him more.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I say Surefour is because he's more cerebral. He's constantly thinking about, okay, this guy's gonna get on my backline, and he can play really aggressive or really defensive.
Yeah.
And he knows when to do the other and why. Which is nice to have. Logix is more, I'd say, Logix is more of a, how do I, he clears zones from the back, starting from the back, and then when he gets into a space where, hey, I don't have to worry about like marking anyone or anything, that's when he can go really aggressive. The moment, like, I felt like he chased Edison around a lot.
Yeah.
Just because, like, okay, when there's someone in your backline and he's confident in using the packs, and using the packs playing on the packs and like using corners and angles and stuff, like you have to clear that first, right? Or I feel like Surefour would say, I'm gonna do that before Edison does, and then I'm gonna back up and then kill him, give him the sense that he's free, and then I'm gonna back up and like figure out how to play that kind of mind game. Where that's the only reason where I can sort of think like that's the way I would do it. But it really comes down to confidence on the day.
And it comes down to like I don't know, like I've seen Surefour's Tracer early in the year, and every time I saw it, it never really impressed me. The damage output, statistically wasn't necessarily there. The team fight percentage wasn't necessarily there. But I do agree that it would be interesting to see. Again, like Logix's Tracer he just impressed me so much throughout the year. And I mean, again, we saw it against Vancouver Titans, where there was just fights that he was single-handedly carrying. I know Vancouver is a different team than Atlanta. I don't want to just like shut my brain off and not realize that and take that into consideration. But I don't know. It was interesting to see, but that was one of the reasons why I think Zykk got a little bit of hate, because going into this, I think both Chris and I were like play Logix. I've wanted Logix and Surefour the entire year, man. Even when it was a McCree May meta, I wanted to see Surefour in the May, and I know maybe that was a thing of just Surefour didn't want to play it, but he's such a well-rounded, jack of all trades player, like one of those players, like you said, who's meta-proof. Like, really wanted to see him give that a shot, and we just never saw it. So now that I fully thought we were going to get a full game, Surefour Logix, and it just didn't happen again. And I was like, damn. But maybe there's reasons. There's scrim results. There's a lot of stuff that we don't have access to, right? So I just like the theory craft in here. But
there's a ton of stuff that like we don't see, especially that
exactly
you can't comment on or like even dispute. Like I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's be honest. If they lose 3-0 to Atlanta, let's say that going into the fuel match, same result. Like, especially after how poorly they performed last week, right? Let's say the same result happens, and then okay, now what are we in? It's the same sort of meta. I know it's different bands, but like same sort of meta. Shake it up, man. Like you were saying earlier, like that, like we're too late in the season for a lot of stuff. Right, and that's true, but it's not too late if someone gets in there and just grabs them by the ears and it's like, wake up, and like we do something different. Right, because it's like clearly the way you've been approaching it before is not working to what everyone wants. Maybe it is. I have no idea. But let's say that it's not, for the sake of argument.
Yep.
Like, big change needs to happen. Big change.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Toronto Defiant's been shaked on the ears at least once or twice this season before.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys are kind of discussing Surefour on the Tracer, and just to add my quick 2 cents. I was agreeing with Spencer a lot, but rethinking about it, it kind of does make sense why it may be interesting to think that Surefour should be good on the Tracer, because for me, like, Tracer isn't all about fragging out. A lot of it's about kind of the mental game with getting your component into your opponent's minds, always being a nuisance to them. And I think there's a cerebral part that Surefour could excel at. Now, stats don't lie. Like, he hasn't been doing as well on the Tracer in stats in win fight percentages, but that could be due to small
Some other
sample
stuff.
size.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't seen him a lot on there.
Mhm.
So just like kind of covering those two points right there. Now, do you have anything else you guys wanted to chat about before we talk a little bit about the Toronto Field game?
Yeah. For what you said about the stats thing, and I was an analyst for Montreal, of course.
Yeah.
And I worked with the stats all the time, and I worked with Roy closely. I used Winston's lab when I was there at the time, and we came to the conclusion that was like general sense, stats don't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's all subjective to what's happening. There are hundreds of styles of tracers. There are hundreds of styles of Ashe, tanks, supports. Things could change all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so maybe the sample size of stats for Surefour is like, it could be of a certain meta where maybe the role that he needed to play wasn't something that he was comfortable with.
Yeah.
Or maybe like, it depending on when it was, maybe the personnel at the time wasn't the best, right? Like, I see that roster and I'm like, okay, as Edison, okay, I'm running into one of the most frag heavy Zenyatas in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, and a Baptiste. Aside from if Cruz is good or bad or whatever, like it's a BAP. There's immortality field. It's an issue.
Yep.
So I'm running into a frag heavy backline. The tanks understand mostly where they're supposed to be, right? And then you pick, okay, then let's say, okay, who's better at dueling Ashes? If it's Logix or Surefour, put them on that role, and then the Tracer's the other hard carry in that composition. So front to back, like, the Tracer's more important than the Ashe, in my opinion, because honestly, if you're hitting your dynamites and you're shooting heads as Ashe, you're doing your job.
Yeah.
It's not entirely about cross-firing. You can, and it's good. Obviously, taking angles is great. If you when you find the right timing for it, but like, if you can hit your mechanics and like take slight off angles here and there, you still get the same amount of value as like any other Ashe, because it's harder for the Ashe to pop off than it is for the Tracer. It's more noticeable for the Tracer to pop off, clearly, right? We're talking about Edison here.
Yeah.
So like, that's where I think like Surefour is better because of that sort of style. Like, and it all comes down to trust. I trust that Kriv in my backline is gonna throw a Discord on him, and every time that Edison oversteps, I'm recalling and I'm backing up to kill Edison as a Tracer, right? Same side. Like, I trust that if Edison goes for an aggro play on my backline, they're going to orb each other and they're going to try to kill each other and keep each other alive. And then my tanks are going to play slow in the front.
Yeah. Nope.
Oh,
hold up. Technical difficulties. No. It was so good over the. Oh, wait, he's back. There we go. I was going to say.
Good?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, just a split second. It just shut down.
I'm
but
good.
You're back. All right. Sorry. Continue.
Anyways, yeah. So like, it's all about like the little stuff, how it all like snowballs into each other.
Stats need its context.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, exactly. So first of all, I mean, stats always need their context, right? Like, you learn that first thing in econometrics is like, hey, like it's like a way to tell the story, right? It's not the story. And I always liked. I mean, the only thing I really use stats for is the team fight stats. I think those are the ones that are really like relevant. I think just the raw damage per 10 is just like, it's just not enough, right? Like, I want to see how they perform on like a team stat basis. That's sort of the only ones that I really look at. But I do agree. I personally just, again, from like watching the videos, watching the stuff, that like every time I saw Surefour on there, I just felt like he was like kind of losing the Tracer duel, and then I would see Logix on there, and I never necessarily felt that way. But I also I don't disagree that was, again, it could have easily came down. I never really sat there and thought about like what was the Chaser's job in that specific meta at that specific time, given those resources, playing that specific comp, and then how could that be switched versus like the new Ashe Tracer BAP Zen meta with the personnel you have available to you. I think that we were both on the same page. Like I did want to see more of Logix Tracer because I did think that the May just didn't have the Lucio, didn't have the Reinhardt to really like enable that true effectiveness. But it is what it is. Like I mean, they played what they played.
It's just seeing what they got. Like
exactly.
Test everything. Look at everything.
Yeah.
You're at the latter half of the season. Something needs to change.
Yeah.
Let's change it up. Like
Okay.
that. As a head coach, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Like okay, my team's like we're not looking good. We need to get into playoffs. Right. I got pressure from the higher ups.
Yep.
Right. I have the same thing, and
100%.
I'm in tier 2, but like I have the same pressures. Like hey, like are we doing okay? Like what's going on? Right.
Yep.
Okay. Got to change something up.
Yep.
Make something different.
No, I love that mentality too. Yeah. If it's exactly. I don't like people just sit there be complacent with like mediocrity, and this goes across like all sports, not just esports, traditional sports as well. Like, there's no worse place to be than like a 9th, 10th place in the NHL, right? Like, I absolutely hate when people just sort of try to sit there, either like do one thing or do another. But I guess just moving on, since we're running a little bit long here, but I don't mind. It's a great conversation. Let's get into the Dallas Field game, really, and sort of preview that. Unless you have any final thoughts.
Not really. That's
okay.
Good.
Awesome. So I guess the first thing I want to hear was just sort of like the biggest change. Not only is obviously Dallas Field just got swept by the Vancouver Titans, but they didn't play Decay, so like it's hard to truly take that game into consideration until we know what the starting 6 is going to be. But the biggest change to me is the no hero bans. Do you really see that impacting the meta as a whole, or in your opinion, is it kind of like, man, Double Shield, ByZenith, Ash Tracer, we saw it work for the Florida Mayhem and the May Melee, that still might actually be meta regardless of the bans?
Okay, so certain teams favor certain stuff.
Yeah.
Like I know Gladiators favors a lot of the Ryan Sigma stuff.
Yeah.
A lot. Even in scrims. And then Florida, I'm sure, is going to stick with the Ash Tracer stuff because a big balance change hasn't happened like recently.
Yeah.
So it's still like whether they're talking about we don't want to have metas, like there's still a meta within the no bans. Like we found it like
absolutely
before then. There's a meta for sure. So people will stick to that. But at the same time, I think most teams that aren't creative enough to figure out another strategy will stick to that. But teams that know what they're good at and know what they like will like veer off and do something else. I can guarantee you Shock is not going to play Tracer Ash. Like maybe they will for a bit, but I think they'll play other stuff.
Even with Twilight Violet on the ByZenith and even with Striker Ons on the Ash Tracer.
They will. I think they will, but Brig is in the play now, so that's something else.
Yeah, that's something else.
Obviously,
Brig and Echo were the two that I think we're going to be most interested in.
Echo would be something. I don't think they use Sombra, but Echo might be something they do. Of course, I think they still might play that stuff. I think they'll favor Widow because you put Onslaught on Widow. It's same thing. Most maps favor that range anyways.
Yep.
And she's versatile where she moves faster than Ash does.
Yep.
Arguably gets more value. So maybe they don't play Ash, but they'll play Tracer, I'm sure. Maybe Torb some places. They played it Torb against who they play Washington.
Yeah.
So they played Torb against Washington. So they might do stuff like that. Gladiators I think is going to still play that Ryan Sigma stuff, and it's pretty the idea behind it is cool. I don't think it's incredible. I mean, granted, I'm thinking about it for my team. I don't have the personnel. Like, I have the personnel to do it. I don't think I could sell that to them, right? But they have Cloudy, who's Ryan Extraordinary ranked
really
god.
Yeah.
So, like, you put him in, and then, like, you have a discussion with everyone, like, hey, I think this is good. And then people buy into Cloudy's thoughts, and then guess what? You're playing it.
Yeah.
So people are going to stick with what they like and enjoy, really. Like, I think most, and what's crazy is most Korean or APAC teams will favor dive.
Yeah, Sombra Echo, right? I was expecting a lot of that for the,
Right, and we on Third Impact tried that, and we actually got pretty damn good at it. To the point where, like, Doge was a really good team to scrim for that because it was, like, they knew how to play it just as well as we did.
Yeah.
Sort of. Like, we kind of sucked a little bit. They kind of sucked a little bit. It went back and forth. But, like, it all comes down to the tic-tac-toe, or the rock, paper, scissors, sorry. Of who beats what and what you think beats what, because you can play anything and everything with a one swap, two swaps, and then maybe something happens. I don't know. We'll see. The no bans will be interesting because I don't think many people will change drastically. Maybe
especially
a few teams will
first week
creative, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think maybe the first week it might be pretty standard, but I think if you move into like the second week, the actual Summer Showdown, you might see more creativity because there is that 2 week long period exactly they can sort of experiment with things. Because Brig was the big one because I think if you are running Tracer, like with the Brig armor pack being so valuable, but then is it worth losing the Discord / shield break that a Zenyatta provides, or like I think you would keep a mortality regardless. I think Baptiste is just really good. So that was sort of the question for me, and I don't know if we would see like an Ashe Echo like we kind of saw earlier, because I know we wouldn't run the Sombra, but like Ashe Echo was sort of considered meta early in the May Melee until like obviously Florida went on their run. That to me that was the bigger questions, because I think that seeing either Zykk on the Echo or Agilities, who's been I think practicing the Echo at the very least, the Genji and stuff like that on stream, might be interesting.
Yeah. It all comes down to, for the Defiant at least, if they do go that route, it all comes down to like what personnel they like and with who, really.
Yeah.
They have 4. Okay, like let's take everything aside from the performances and whatever. They have 4 pretty good DPS. Surefour and Logix obviously being above the other 2.
Yeah.
But like they're 4 pretty good DPS considering.
Mhm.
And it just matters like how do the comms fit? Like do they have right plans? Do they understand the space management, right? Like I don't know, maybe like no knock to Agilities. Let's say Agilities doesn't understand something that Zykk does.
Yeah.
Right? Now let's say Zykk doesn't understand something that Agilities does. That warrants a swap or who plays what.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to like the coaches should do their job enough to know like who should be in what.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Brig BAP is really good, of course, because of armor. And we knew that Third Impact from like months ago, like 5 months ago. We were the only team that played Brig Lucio in a brawl comp.
Yeah.
Because armor is busted.
Yeah. Florida played it.
And it got nerfed. It got nerfed.
Yeah.
And like it was still good.
Yeah.
So it's like the Brig is nasty to play around. Now long range maps, like let's say Havana or something that's like super long range, Zen's gonna be better in my opinion. I hate teams that just play the Brig BAP like into a long range spam team that gonna lose the shield war. You have a Zen
for sure.
Right? So we'll see based off the map. I'm sure there's tons of teams that like Chalk is the best one, obviously, that like plays comps per map, which are great because it makes it really versatile. Like obviously you only get a little bit of practice on it rather than like a whole meta, but that's not the point. The point of no metas is to have a bunch of stuff in order to do that stuff. So we'll see, I guess. I mean, I don't know. We didn't work that much with Zykk on Echo. Like Zykk for us, he left like a week into Echo.
Yeah, he was
like,
kind of made
coaching Echo, right? And we had Razor come in, and Razor hadn't played Echo in a competitive environment, period.
Yeah.
Like only in ranked. So when we won week 4 of Contenders, that had been 5 days of him playing it in a competitive environment.
Yeah.
So
hey,
like I mean, maybe I don't know. Like maybe if Zykk had more time, he'd be better at Echo. I have no idea. Maybe if he wasn't on ping, he would be better.
Yeah.
I know for a fact like his May's nasty. If he wasn't on ping and like you got to see his May and like how you were talking about how Agilities has like raw fragging potential, Zykk does have that.
Yeah.
He's just on ping.
He's
ping
on
lock.
ping.
I've seen it happen where we've played on EU and he'll carry.
Yeah.
Like Tracer comes to our backline, icicle to the head.
Yeah.
Someone cross map, icicle to the head.
Yeah.
Just like easily finds that windows. Maybe there's weaker teams, obviously, but
yeah.
So
we still saw that a little bit against Vancouver. Zykk had some pretty good moments in the May in terms of his like frag potential.
Yeah.
For me with the Dallas feel like obviously the elephant in the room is Decay going to play?
Yeah,
is he not going to play? I think even if the Decay plays, like, and maybe I'm just too optimistic because I'm a Toronto fan and that's just like how we are. But I still like think that we can beat that team. Like I always try to calm the mob down who's so riled up about this team. And I keep bringing it back to like, hey, look how we performed versus the LA Valiant just like a few weeks ago to a month ago, right? And like what I believe was an Ashe Echo meta, right? Like we brought them to 5 games where we lost 2 maps and it was 4 100% to 99% coughs in a row. Those are the 2 out of the 3 we lost. And now LA Valiant's a top, they just beat the Florida Mayhem 3-1. It's like everyone take a step back. Like this was a team that struggled a lot early on. I think Cruz helped a lot with like the leadership. Replacing Calyx I did think was pretty big for this team. And then in terms of like Numlock or Beast, like again, I think it comes down to like what are you looking for? Like maybe Numlock's got better shot calling, maybe Beast is a little bit more not ping locked, a little bit more mechanically skilled. So like it depends on the comp they want to run. Yeah. But I think regardless that this is still a team that can beat the Dallas field even with Decay in the lineup. The issue is like, Decay on Tracer is just so scary.
I mean, it really is. And I mean, I'm going to, at this point, be a little bit part of the mob and just say that, like, we're really one of the only teams that haven't been a good team yet. Like, we beat Paris at the very start of the season, but like,
without XC, without Spark,
that was a while ago. Like, I'm not really counting that anymore. So we haven't really beaten any team. We keep on being like, okay, well, it was a close loss. Okay, well, it was a close loss. Okay, like, I just got to see results at this point before I'd be too optimistic about this game. Like, this is, if we can win this game and win it handily, I will be very happy, more optimistic. But until that point,
it depends. I think how Dallas recover from last week.
Yeah.
If they come back like, okay, well, sorry, we underestimated like Titan, then they come in flying. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyone could beat anyone on any given day.
Yeah.
Like it just comes down. It literally comes down to me. Like, or what I watched from Dallas is I don't think that Onigod made any like I don't think he was the reason they were worse. I
No.
don't think at all. I think there was something going on. There's might be something going on. I don't internally or something that became an issue or
Yeah.
whatever. And like we've had that too. Like there's times where like there's something mentally happens and player gets rattled, and then maybe the shot calling ability is gone. Right. I don't know how much Decay gives the comms.
Yeah.
Of course. So I don't. Maybe he is the shot caller. I know Oni from coaching him, and he's not an incredibly like extravagantly vocal player.
Yeah.
But like I'm sure he can do it now and stuff like that. So I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe also they're in growing pains too. Like they have paintbrush
and also Oniga came on first
right.
game.
So maybe like okay, like let's I'll use my team for example. Okay, Zykk goes to the Defiant. We pick up Razor. Razor comes from an almost open division team, or like he was benched. Right. So we're like, oh crap, like some like maybe people quietly had like maybe he's not good, maybe he's that and the other, right? Until you start playing with him and feeling it out, like okay, he's actually smart and like have an intelligent conversation. So maybe like just maybe let's say that a few of the players on that roster don't think that Paintbrush is better than what's his name, Closer.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say that happens, and that can happen all the time. It's just a discussion and easy fix, in my opinion. Easy fix. Arrow's completely capable of doing that, and I think he probably will if that's the issue.
Yeah.
But like, there's little stuff like that that can just throw a team off super badly. I agree with you actually that the Defiant could beat him.
Yeah.
Especially with the way they played. The Fuel, I mean. So it's just a matter of like, to me, it's okay. Does Dallas recover or not?
Yeah.
And assuming they don't recover or make a full 180 again, like, do the Defiant make the leaps and bounds they need to this week?
Yeah.
In scrims, like right now, are they making the moves they need to? Are they learning what they need to? Are they developing farther beyond what they have?
Yeah.
Right. So it all comes down to that, in my opinion.
Because I just agree that like I think part of it with Dallas could have just been like, hey, let's figure out what the actual issues with this roster are that like Decay was sort of masking by just being just so good at the game, right? Like at some point it's like you're winning games, but you're not really winning games. Like you're not improving the way you should be. It's sort of at the end of the day, like I know in Overwatch a single player can't carry to the degree that like LeBron James can carry the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know what I mean? But there still is things that when a player of Decay's caliber can bring to the table and can sort of mask deficiencies in your roster because he's just so good. So maybe there was some truth to that. I don't necessarily know if I believe, but I'm also not a Dallas Field podcast. I have no information, right? Just like taking a step back and looking at it. I think, I agree that Dallas Field's mentality, but I think Toronto Defiant's mental is just as big of a question mark at this point. Like, how do you recover from just getting, looking like you have your feet under you to all of a sudden you're getting boomed again by the Atlanta Reign. And now you also have to bounce back, especially when the Vancouver Titans just 3-0 the Dallas Fuel. Like, you know what I mean? That's another team that you thought maybe you'd get ahead of in the standings, but it might not be the case depending on the map differential. So there's a couple things going there. I think just, again, like just getting that like consistency down is such a big thing for this roster. It seems like there's always like one game we're high, one game we're low, one game the backline's performing increased fragging, and then all of a sudden they're cut out of position. One game, I think the Halt accretions and the Halt fluxes are really on point. The next game they're not. So I think that like consistency is going to be a big thing for this team, and I'll always support them. Obviously, have faith in them, but I think Decay or not, this is winnable. I think if they don't have Decay, then I'm like predicting like a 3-win Defiant. Like at the very least, I know a lot of it's meta and mentality, but I do think that like support, like just comparing supports to supports, DPS to DPS, tanks to tank, we should be able to win that game. I think it becomes really interesting if Decay comes back in the lineup and they fix their mental stuff. That's when it's going to be a much more difficult task.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, there's for the backline matchup, I agree for sure. I mean, I was coaching against Primzo and Paintbrush from a long time.
Yeah.
And then like the rest of that roster, Oni too. I've coached him and coached against him. They have firepower if they need it, but like it's not like Kariv is incredible. Primzo is also incredible, but like maybe there's a certain issues that don't allow him to be that way.
Yeah.
Crimzo to me is the like he was like we playing against him like the Ana like if he ever has to get on Ana is like okay dude you
Yeah.
have to play against this.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I
Chris
love Crimson.
the same
He
way.
was
I can't tell you
Canada.
how many times like my front line in dive v dive against the Defiant has like literally death slammed trying to kill Crib on Ana. Like I'm serious because he just evades and lives
so
for
good.
so long.
He's so good.
Yeah. So like in any given day, I think those guys could beat each other. It's just it literally. I don't know. I think for the Defiant, they need to have something to rally around.
Yeah.
Because okay, like this is me, my outside perspective. I'm the head coach. I'm in their shoes. I'm the head coach. Okay,
Right,
so
yeah.
my best player, which is Surefour, right, is maybe he's losing confidence in the ability for us to win.
Yeah.
Right? Like let's say you go from a really good team, like Gladiators last season, to now down a little lower.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have someone to
Little
talk that out, or someone that you can like discuss that with, or like someone that'll lead you beyond that, then you're gonna stay down there.
Yeah.
Like mentally as like an individual. So they have to rally around something like I don't know. I don't think you can do it around the growing anymore because like of course that's the obvious thing. We're still growing. But like how much longer can
At
you
some
say
point, it's a
that
cop
we're
out. Yeah.
growing?
I agree.
Yeah. How much longer can you say we're growing? So for me, I think it's like I think there needs to be just something like there needs to be some leadership in there somewhere. And I don't know if Lil Bo is a leader in a interim head coach or whatever.
It's a tough
But there's
position to be in as well
there
too.
needs-
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
So like there needs to be someone that just sits everyone down and goes, look, like we're invested in this. I listened to like what Adam talked about when you had him on.
Yeah.
Like when you sit him down and be like, hey, you guys are being complacent or whatever, or like you're not giving us 110% of effort every single time you set foot in the game.
Yeah.
Right. There's a reason. There's a reason that it doesn't happen, and then there should be punishments, and then there should be a recovery.
Yeah.
Right. Because you want them to like realize I can never do that again.
Yeah.
Right. So like if it is, let's say Surefour and Logix and the guys that were there the whole time that know that I'm a good caliber player, and they're like, oh, a little lower, like build them up.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like Zykk. If Zykk, for Zykk and Numlock specifically, like if the team starts playing better, they'll start playing better. They're both consistent. I've known Num for a little bit. Like I've heard his comms. He's a monster in comms.
Yeah.
Like for sure.
I agree.
Like I just tank duo Happy like when they were in tier 2, like same thing, monster in comms.
Yeah.
So I'm not I wouldn't be worried about those two guys because they have strong mentals like where they're not defeated. But maybe if the guys that are a little defeated, like let's say Kariv's a little defeated, let's say that Surefour and Logix are a little defeated, right? Like if you fix those guys that are being looked up to from the other guys, like what, like then things get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So there needs to be like a leadership thing somewhere, shake up somehow that can get them there. And I think you guys can beat Fuel for sure.
Yeah,
it's
I completely agree.
a matter of like,
I agree. Yeah.
do they show up?
Yeah. And then it's do they show up, and it's for me a part of it's just getting the meta right too. Like I think there's been a couple times, not just the recent, multiple times this season where we've showed up and then all of a sudden like Agility is playing like Pharmacy and like McCree, and I'm like, oh my god, like we're just getting rolled, right? Like I don't think that's the right call in this particular situation against like Double Shield, whatever. I think there's a few different times where we've just sort of came out there and I tried something, and I like the creativity, like I do, like especially if you're losing the mirror matchup. Again, complacency is the worst thing. Like don't just sit there and lose 3-0 in a mirror matchup. At least try to be creative. But there are some times where I think we start off, and I'm like, man, I don't know if that was a strategy. Not sure if that was a strategy.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, they've done scrims, right? They have access to a lot more information than I do. I have my own opinions. You have your own opinions, but like we're not there, right? So that's going to be an important thing for me. But I agree with you. My prediction, it's tough. I like have to have two. I think it's going to be like a 3-1, 3-0 if they don't run Decay and we see the Dallas feel that we saw versus the Vancouver Titans. And then I think it's going to be a close match if we see the Dallas feel that a lot of people are expecting, i.e. like before they played Vancouver. Because I do think that the Dallas field do have those potentials to like just pop off, and Doha and Decay can really carry a match like that duo single-handedly. So that'll be a lot closer. But I think it's more than a winnable game.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's gonna be for me. It's 3-1 both ways, and it's not gonna be like a blowout 3-1. It's gonna be like
Close
the
3-1.
last map is gonna be a fight.
Yeah.
The second to last map is gonna be a fight. Let's say they win they win Koth, or Toronto Defiant win Koth, and then they win 3. But like it's close.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Or
agree about that.
Something like that. I think that's something that's more realistic in my opinion. So see.
Chris, what's your sort of predictions then, Chris, going into this next matchup?
Without Decay, I'm gonna go with Spencer and be like probably like a 3-1. With Decay, I'm gonna say 3-2 for Fuel.
Okay.
Because once again, I just gotta wait. Gotta wait
know.
to see us perform before I can.
Don't you
really
just hate
get
that?
I'm always the optimistic one too. I'm always the one who like, I'm like, man, Defiant can. We're improved. Like we're gonna give Atlanta a run for their money. I know, and then we just get shit stomped 3-0, and I'm like, oh
You
my
should
God.
see this guy after we lose games though. He's like, I cannot believe this, and I'm like, okay, calm down, Spencer. Just calm down, relax. It's okay.
I have to rant to Chris. I don't go on Twitter and publicly say something I shouldn't, but I'm always just like, man, it's just so tough. Yeah, it's like, because again, it's like you were saying. You're passionate, right? It's like I want to see them improve, and I've invested a year and a half of my life into covering the Defiant every week, and I was there when we lost 8 matches in a row without winning a map, right? I was there when we were running Gods and Yakpung at the same time. Like it was tough, and I was really hoping that we'd kind of gotten past that, and then it just seems like we're a little bit falling back into where we were before, and it's like just because you care and you support the team that you want to see them excel.
Passionate about it.
Excel.
So you get pissed.
Yeah, exactly. Especially
Alex,
when it's like teams we should be beating. But
I didn't ask you, who's your OWL team?
My OWL team? I don't have one. I'm
You don't have an
bipartisan.
OWL
Are you
team.
kidding me? I'm trying to get there. I can't pick
yeah,
one.
you can't publicly go on and pick a team, Chris. Come on.
Now I live an hour south of LA.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't support actively the LA teams or whatever. Yeah. Truthfully speaking, I guess my OWL team would be like I have one per region really. Like I have Shock because I like Shock, and I like them because they're what I want my team to be. They're by the book, disciplined. It's not that they just listen to Krusty. They're creative. The way I describe them is like the way they move in game, and I've scrimmed them a bunch of times, and the way they move in game from goats to the stuff they do now is beautiful because it's synchronized and it's just so much trust to it. So I like them. And then if you go to the APAC region, I love watching NYXL play. I love dive, period, because a good dive team is very apparent. Right, Shanghai's great. NYXL's great. I love watching that good dives 100%. And it just depends. I'm bipartisan everything. I want to see good Overwatch. I don't care who wins or loses. And then if someone's playing well and
that's a sign of a true fan right there.
I mean, yes.
And then after this interview, Toronto Defiant, clearly number one. Don't worry about it. Your eyes said all they need to. Even if your words won't.
That's gonna be the caption of our YouTube video. Alex supports Defiant to the end.
Once you go Montreal Rebellion, you can never go back. But yeah, I mean, again, I just want to say, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Any sort of closing thoughts you want? I mean, we'll put all your social media and stuff like that in the description below for anybody who's interested in checking your Third Impact out. But just if you had the floor to sort of just close this out.
I mean, just come watch us next season, right? The number one competition for us, going to OWL. So we have a much bigger chance next season to take it all the way. So we'll see. Just support tier 2 to the point where you don't just vaguely watch it.
Yeah.
If you're just looking at Wikipedia results and saying, oh, whatever, go watch a game if you're bored or something. We're in quarantine and because of the COVID pandemic, you got some time.
Yeah.
You have some free time and it's at night or something like that. You're bored out of your mind. Netflix is out of everything.
You've already watched The Last Airbender twice. You might as well watch some tier 2, right?
Might as well. Throw some and don't NA, EU, Korea, PAC, China, go look at some other stuff because people play some weird stuff. People play some good, crazy stuff, and it's all just it's all fun to watch because it's just if you follow them from the beginning and they get to the Overwatch League. I knew them since when they weren't cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Support tier 2, of course. Support tier 2.
Yeah. So hashtag support tier 2 as always. Chris, any closing thoughts for yourself?
No. Good chat. Nice chat with you, Alex.
Almost. Thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a long one, but it was an awesome one. I had a great time the entire time. So if you guys enjoyed, I mean, as always, subscribe, check out Alex and Third Impact. All that will be in the description below. And as always, guys, enjoy.